Watch this.
People are coming to terms with a post-Roe Idaho, which means what for anti-abortion organizations like Stanton Healthcare? And what about the women they serve? They fled their war-torn country for safety in the U.S., some without even much understanding of the American culture or the English language. Well, now volunteers are working with dozens of Ukrainian children to make them feel welcome in their temporary home. From gas price profits to city pool updates, you've certainly asked your fair share of questions over the last few days. Now, let's get some answers. Reproductive health care is about to look a lot differently here in Idaho. A little more than a month, abortions will be outlawed. There are a few exceptions for health emergencies for the mother and cases of rape and incest that are reported to law enforcement. Whether you agree with it or not, it is expected to be the law of the land, barring any ruling from a court that says otherwise. We know Planned Parenthood in Idaho is shifting resources to just over the border in Oregon, where abortion care will remain legal. But what about within Idaho? Stanton Healthcare, which is anti-abortion and works to provide what they call life-affirming care for pregnant mothers, they held an event this week called Supporting Women in an Abortion-Free Idaho. The event featured the first on-camera comments from Idaho Governor Brad Little about Idaho's pending trigger law. Their clinic will now take on a new role, Stanton Healthcare's, in a post-Roe era here in Idaho. Here's Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris.
So the symposium is titled Supporting Women in an Abortion-Free Idaho. First of its kind, post-Roe, where we brought the community together, faith leaders, community leaders, and lawmakers to discuss and get our minds together about how we as a community and as a state can support women in a state where abortion will soon be illegal, and how we can walk through with women through an unexpected pregnancy and beyond and take care of them, support them, and empower them to make the right choice for their family and to embrace life with that child.
Danielle Versluis is the Chief Operations Officer for Stanton International. The changing of Idaho's abortion laws now puts focus on centers like Stanton, a provider that does not offer abortions. Instead, they tout life-affirming care.
I know there's a lot of what-ifs out there, and of course in Idaho, one of the what-ifs is, what if I need an emergency abortion? Places like Planned Parenthood are no longer next door. Women might have to drive out of state if they're looking for abortion care, and in an emergency situation, they may not have 45 minutes to get to Oregon. In a situation like that, if you were to have someone come into Stanton and say, I think I might need an emergency abortion, what does Stanton offer? I know it's a life-affirming care center, but I guess in these what-if situations, what do you do?
Sure, we don't even blink. A woman comes in and she says, we've had this happen before, and we have women come in and say, I think that I needed an emergency abortion, my doctor said, or I don't know what's happening. And we immediately connect them with a doctor who will value their life and the life of their baby and treat them both as patients and do his utmost to save the life of that mom and of that baby. Because we value all human life, not just the moms, not just the babies, we value them both. And whatever situation the woman finds her medically, we need to respond to that compassionately and with a view towards saving both lives. And so we would connect a woman with a doctor who will have that mindset and that attitude.
Idaho Governor Brad Little shared his thoughts at the event in a video message. He touched on the changing laws and the challenges ahead.
But our work has only started. We fully acknowledge the monumental moment in our nation's history means we must confront what we know will be growing needs for women and families in the months and years ahead. We absolutely must come together like never before to support women and teens facing unexpected or unwanted pregnancies. Families, churches, charities, local and state government, and you, the Stanton supporters, stand ready to lift them up and help them and their families.
What do you think is the most important role for Stanton in this community right now in terms of serving a group of women that previously might not have come here?
Our biggest challenge is going to be to make sure that women know about Stanton. And that is why we brought together all these community leaders to say, you need to spread the word too and let them know about the work of Stanton. Not only are we asking them to support the work we do and to come volunteer to give, to support and sustain the work we do, but also we need the information about Stanton to get out to the women who are facing these unexpected or challenging pregnancies.
Planned Parenthood reports that a very small percentage of their actual work is abortion care. And I know when Planned Parenthood moved out of Boise, there was concerns from some members of the community. Well, the other services that are not abortion related, who will make that up? Is Stanton in a position to make up the other care that Planned Parenthood did outside of abortions?
Absolutely. And so we provide STI testing, we provide well woman care, we provide after abortion exams, which Planned Parenthood does not. They provide a woman an abortion, she's on her way. Here at Stanton, a woman comes in and says she has had an abortion. We treat her with open arms. We welcome her with open arms. And we provide her with that medical care, critical medical care that she needs to be back on her journey to reproductive wellness. And so we advocate on behalf of family planning that looks at a woman holistically. We help women walk through healthy, green options for family planning. We help encourage them in their relationships, their choices. We encourage them to develop a community network. So we run the whole gamut of services at Stanton. And so Planned Parenthood leaving does not leave a gap. Stanton has been doing this work for a long time. All it does is take abortion out of the equation in Boise. Stanton is still here doing the work we've always done, which is walking with women through their reproductive journey, whether they be pregnant, seeking to become pregnant, post-abortive, or post-pregnancy. And so we will always be here.
It's important to note that for the time being, abortions do remain legal in the state of Idaho. That pending trigger law does not go into effect until later in August. And Brian, I know we've had a lot of questions from viewers at home and also from experts around the state. How is all this going to play out? Well, the first thing we need to watch is the Supreme Court in the state of Idaho. Coming up the first week of August, they're going to start having some hearings on two separate laws that are actually caught up in the court system right now. We have the trigger law, which Planned Parenthood is asking to be paused, and we also have that civil enforcement mechanism that would allow people to sue over, in civil court over what they would say is illegal abortions. Both of those are pending right now. In early August, we're going to get a real indication of when those will go into effect. But the bottom line here is that there's a lot of unknowns, and until some of this plays out in terms of an investigation, in terms of seeing this in court, in terms of seeing, a doctor making a difficult choice, do I provide care or not? We're going to have to wait and see. Nobody knows how this is going to play out.
What I find interesting is a couple weeks ago, Stanton Healthcare was in the middle of something online, but they said they are not a political organization. Yet at the last two events that they've sponsored, including this one here, they've had politicians participate in both of those events. Both Representative Russ Fulcher, and now Governor Brad Little. So it is interesting, and as you said, we'll watch as this thing plays out through the rest of the summer, at least now down to almost 30 days.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Joe. And Idaho has become a new home to some Ukrainians seeking refuge. As you might guess from pictures and videos from the war in Ukraine, these people lost their homes, and some have lost more than that. They had to leave their country behind. Starting over in a new place isn't easy, as many of you may know. Necessities like finding shelter, buying food, and just getting a job can be difficult. And it's a struggle made even more difficult if you can't speak the language, which is where volunteers in Nampa are helping out. They plan to spend 5 weeks teaching Ukrainian children to speak English. Andrew Bartline explains how that will ultimately help their families.
There's no mixed messages at this Nampa church. The sign reads, "Welcome, come on in." And so they do. Single file, a line of Ukrainian refugees shuffle through the doors. Inside, they'll meet Enoch Gorotoy alongside dozens of other volunteers. But Enoch is bilingual.
My mom, she's from Ukraine, and we like to help out.
He helps bridge the gap between Ukrainian or Russian speakers to English, because these young refugees are just finding their footing in Idaho.
This is practically like another session of schooling they have to go through, but we try to make it as fun and engaging as possible here.
Fun for the older kids means robotics.
Read instructions and understand some of the components in English.
While the younger kids dig through and build with Legos.
How that puzzle comes together is the thing that excites me.
Joni Leap runs the camp. Here, 44 Ukrainian children, from 2 years old to teenagers, are immersed in English.
They're building that trust, and they're learning to look to their peers.
Only a few of these peers speak their native language. Others only speak English. This immersion has the Ukrainian kids challenging themselves to make friendships.
Some of the common phrases like good morning or please, or I need to use the bathroom, some of the kids are starting to use some of those words in their communication with us.
Over time, you begin to talk with them more, and they get to know you more, and then you're sort of just know each other, and then you can help them out wherever they need help.
Volunteer teachers from local school districts are running the 5-week class, but Leap doesn't expect these kids to leave speaking fluent English. In fact, she's okay if they hardly learn the language at all, because this is just the foundation.
There's that sense of bringing the child from where they are to some place that empowers them to do the next thing. And that's how I feel about this camp. We don't know what their situation was in Ukraine, but there was certainly trauma. And if we can relieve some of that trauma through healthy kid activities, then that's a win.
Regardless of the tangible results, the volunteers say this program matters.
They are happy.
Because even if these kids can't read the welcome on the door, they can feel the welcome in the classroom.
Cooperation can bridge language barriers and cultural barriers.
And they can hear the welcome in Enoch's voice.
Helping the best we can to the best of our ability at the time we get the chance.
This is the last week of the course, and a few of the kids even came up to me. They tried to start a conversation to practice the English that they've been able to pick up on. And Brian, the Idaho Alliance for Ukrainian Refugees and Immigrants has done a lot of work since these people have come in. There's been a struggle to get official refugee status. We know there's been that humanitarian parole buffer zone. They say there's nearly 200 people now that they're helping through 80 different cases, and those are typically broken up into families. So a lot of people using the resources right now.
And it's cool to see them kind of learn like while doing something instead of just sitting in a classroom and learning by rote. You're doing something, you're interacting, kind of like, you know, a lot of people pick up a language on television or whatever, but doing something and learning how to work together, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, building robotics, you got the directions and kind of matching the pictures with the noun you're looking at. It makes sense.
And the fact that they came up to you and started to speak to you and pick up, that's awesome.
Yeah, it surprised me a little bit.
Nice. All right, thank you very much, Andrew.
Mail time! We've gotten a lot of messages from you over the last couple of days, so we're going to take a few moments to answer a few. And make sure those messages and questions keep coming. Text them to us anytime. Just make sure to include your name and the hashtag the 208. That's how we know it's for us. Here's the number, 208-321-5614. And oh yeah, stick around, because we might share yours at the end of the show.
You know, the average price of gas in Idaho dropped a whole penny between yesterday and today. We're now down to $5.20 a gallon. That's 55 cents above the national average and still the 7th highest price per gallon in the country. But hey, it's progress, right? We're talking about a trend downwards, which is what we started talking about yesterday, this dramatic drop in prices over the course of the last month. Not so much here in Idaho, but overall across the country. But we have seen a little bit here. And we got a couple of messages about the numbers we threw out yesterday, like this text from Jack, who asked, "We all know gas prices are high. It'd be nice, though, and informative to know who gets what when we pay for gas." And this one from Diana, who says, "On gasoline from crude to my tank, what is the actual cost at each distribution point? Where's the most profit taken? Refinery, distributor, station owners, taxes? Who should we be mad at?" Well, I'm guessing there's enough anger to go around these days, considering how much you've had to pay to fill your tank the last several months. But the answer to those questions, well, those can easily be found at Idaho's own Attorney General website. There, they have a breakdown they put together on a regular basis. This is one from February, the most recent one, February of this year, before the price of gas really got going, by the way, when the national average was about $3.50 a gallon, and we were paying $3.45 a gallon here in Idaho. Their data is from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. It looks like this. It all starts with the cost of crude oil, the costliest part of a gallon of gas. Finding the oil, getting it out of the ground, and getting it to the refineries. And that accounts for about 64% of the cost of a $3.45 gallon of gas, or about $2.20 of that. The cost of turning crude oil into gasoline, that'd be the refining part, and the retail cost and profit margins for those companies that do that, well, that adds up to about 21%, or 74 cents a gallon, according to Idaho. Then come the taxes, the part that pay for roads and such. We pay 10% to Idaho and 18% to the feds. So about, 51 cents total in taxes on a gallon of gas. But again, those are February numbers. Digging around the Energy Information Administration website, we found this breakdown, more recent one, from May, when the national average was $4.44. They say 59% of the cost of crude oil, that's where that comes from. 26 goes to refining, and 5% to distribution and marketing, 11% going to taxes. The diesel breakdown is on the right there, with a little bit bigger chunk toward distribution and marketing. Then, of course, when it comes to regular gasoline. Okay, so about those margins. To answer Diana's question about who gets the most profit when it comes to a gallon of gas, there's an explanation of this done by a tax consulting firm recently called RSM, and they pulled their information also from the Department of Energy. They went back and looked at the price of gas during recent select periods over the last 14 or so years, starting with the Great Recession in 2008 through last month. And take a look at the margins for retail, refining, and the cost of crude oil. The crude oil is in blue. That's the cost of crude oil. Refining margins are in orange. Retail margins are in gray. The last time gas was this high was in July of 2008. That's when crude oil cost, as you can see there on that far left graph, in blue, it was a lot more of the per gallon of gas. The refining margin was much lower then. How about in the early days of the pandemic? That would be the second from the right there, or third from the right, excuse me. That would be in June of 2020. Refining margins jumped a lot then. Retail margins were up a bit, and the cost of crude was way down at that time because, we were using much, and so they cut back on production. Last month, under the Ukraine spike, that'd be the far right graph there, the cost of oil is up about $2.50 a gallon over a 3-month average. The refinery margin rebounded to pandemic proportions there, and retail, not as much over as other moments over time. You can see the breakdown there and where most of your gallon of gas costs are going, and that's the profit margin there. So where is your $5.20 going? Mostly to the cost of oil to get it out of the ground, but a decent profit goes to the refinery companies, of which southern Idaho is served by just one in Utah. Gas stations, they do make a pretty penny, just not as much as others, and not as much as in February, but still a pretty steady number over the last 14 years. All right, officially 100 degrees today and several more on the way, as you saw in the 7-day forecast. Triple-digit temperatures really having us wishing we had friends with a pool maybe, or we lived in a subdivision with a pool, or even we lived in a city with a public pool. But some cities in Idaho, they're not so lucky right now. After we talked about the Caldwell pool last week, Jan asked us this question on the 208 Facebook page. I wonder what happened to the plans to build a splash pad where the Emmett pool was dismantled several years ago. Well, that pool was located at Emmett City Park for more than 3 decades. Back in 2018, it was closed after a model revealed extensive structural damage to the pool house and other serious issues with the pool itself. The plan was to rebuild, I should say, but the city couldn't find an estimated $2 million in funding despite a community fundraising effort there. Ultimately, the pool was completely torn out in 2019, a year later. Then 2 years after that, in 2021, Gem County Recreation District proposed putting in a splash pad instead. Yeah, sure, it's smaller, easier to maintain, it's cheaper. And these are the renderings of what that splash pad would look like. Originally, they'd hoped for it to be done and ready in time for everyone to beat the heat this summer. But unfortunately, construction has yet to even start. Clint Siemens, the Public Works Director for the city of Emmett, says there have been delays at the state level, stuff that is out of their control when it comes to putting something like this together. But there is some good news for those in Emmett. He says they plan to bring the proposal to City Council during tonight's meeting for final approval. Siemens says they expect it to cost about $440,000. That number, though, could go up as, of course, the cost of materials and services goes up, too. And if it is approved this evening, he says they're hoping to start construction next spring, not this summer. Sorry about that. And Jim asks, you know anything about the swimming pool in Mountain Home? It's all over the place. And we take you're talking about the new indoor aquatic center in Mountain Home, one that's been in the works there since 2000. It's a long time. One of the main reasons it's not existing yet, well, raising the $5 million needed to actually start construction. They did break ground on the facility last August. And when it's finished, it will be a year-round indoor facility with 2 pools, including other amenities. So the $1 million question for Jim will be, when will it be finished? Last month, the board approved the move forward with the 3rd and final phase, the pools themselves, and they say construction will take about 8 months. So again, sorry Mountain Home, sorry Emmett, no swimming this summer, at least in a public pool, but hopefully by next summer, when it's still going to be hot then too. Our final minute of the 208 today, and once again, we're experiencing some technical difficulties with our texting program, so we could show your text messages on the screen to everybody. We can all read along. So I'm just gonna have to pull them off the phone here just to kind of share them with you, but that's okay. Just kind of follow along with me. A lot of people commenting on Joe's sit down with a member of Stanton Healthcare. They're talking about the post-Roe Idaho and what it means for women's reproductive health. Does support mean helping the woman after the baby is born, asks Sheila. Economic support, educational support, emotional support. No mention of that, she said in that interview. If Stanton thinks that Planned Parenthood leaving doesn't impact the community, they are dead wrong. I heard no talk of them providing contraceptives to women wanting or needing them, nor did she answer Joe's question regarding emergency medical services. I also didn't hear anything about how they plan to provide these for these babies they are so concerned about once they are born, asks Sheila. What is the green contraception mentioned in the Stanton segment, asked Karen in Meridian. And there had a lot of people ask about that. I'm not exactly sure either. Maybe something to do with a calendar. I don't know. We'll have to look into that and get that answer for you later. The short story on gas price spikes. Obama took office in 2008. We know who now. No surprise to about half of us, says this gentleman, B. Deadman. But we all know the president doesn't really have a direct correlation to gas prices, right? We'll see you back here tomorrow.